we could get a lot of heat in Washington for, Dan Snyder, and, justfully so. But I do think Irsay is kind of a hot-headed too.
I came out of last year saying that I think that Taylor Heinicke is one of the most undervalued quarterbacks, and he was expected to do a lot with, not only a defense that had a couple injuries last year that were key, but an offense that was still trying to mesh itself together as well. And now you bring in another anomaly in that in Carson Wentz. And I've actually kind of turned the leaf on Carson Wentz just a little bit by what I've been reading about, what I've been seeing about what his teammates have been saying about him. So, when it comes down to it, if you had to choose a quarterback to start right now for your team, even with the Carson Wentz signing, between these two, who would it be?
Dude, without a question, man, Carson Wentz. I wouldn't even hesitate twice about that, man, to be honest. So I'll give you my perspective on it. So Taylor Heinicke, he had an admirable job last year. He did the best that he could, all things considered. He wasn't supposed to be a starting quarterback last year. They brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was supposed to start. He was supposed to be that little transitional piece from, last year to kind of bridge quarterback to whatever happens in 2022. This draft class right here gets hurt in the first half, basically hurts his hip. Taylor Heinicke has to come in. They kept him on the roster because of that Bucks game. He kind of showed something a little bit. He got picked up like week 14 of 2020. He wasn't even on the roster during that season, but he had, he came in a spot relief because Alex Smith was hurt. Dwayne Haskins was released. They had to get an emergency quarterback. Taylor Heinicke rose to the occasion. So his story is epic. He's like, on his sister's couch. He's an undersized guy. I believe he's an Old Dominion guy, if I remember correctly. He's, from a small school. He basically just came out and just kind of shined. And he did pretty well. I do think that our offense was limited with him. I do think that he had limitations with his arm. He actually had a famous quote throughout the season last year where he's like, I can't throw it to my right, I believe is what he said. Because he basically he turned his body. His arm wasn't strong enough to hit that boundary sideline to the right end boundary. So I was like, you know what? Their limitations, those hitch passes, those quick, jet little, little sweeps on the side. He's had limitations with them, and it set the offense back. Carson Wentz, coming from the Washington perspective, people were shocked when he was added to the team because it was a disappointment that we didn't get Russell Wilson. So if you kind of recall the whole sequence of events, is Washington went big on Russell Wilson, offered a couple with first round picks, maybe even 3 first round picks.
He's a Virginia guy. Correctly.
He's a Virginia guy. He's from Richmond originally. And we basically shot for the stars in regard to Russell Wilson. The Broncos had a bogus statement. They were like, hey, you know what? We're not going to trade Russell Wilson. And then within 24 hours, they trade Russell Wilson. It's a smack in the face after it was announced that we were putting out feelers for him. Yeah. And then within 48 hours, you pick up Carson Wentz. So in regard to reaching for the stars and getting Carson Wentz, it was somewhat deflating, kind of shocking. And I think we have that Washington bias too. He was an Eagle. We kind of hated him as an Eagles player. We didn't really want him on the team. Yeah. So when he came, it was kind of disappointing. But 6'5", 240 pounds. This guy has all the physical tools. In regards, he was a prototypical quarterback coming out of North Dakota, and basically he has a rocket. I think he has the potential to do very well. If you take away his worst season and his best season, he averages about 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions per year. And that's high standard here in Washington, D.C. The last time we had a 30-touchdown quarterback was in 1967 with Sonny Jurgensen. So it's dude, we haven't had a 30. We could do that this year. I know, it's been a minute. Dude. It's been 1967. So, it was bad. So
I would have failed that test if somebody would have gave me that.
There you go. And it's dude, Taylor Heinicke had 20 touchdowns last. I think he had 20 and 14. It's all off the top of my head. 20 and 14, I believe. Carson Wentz at 27 and 7. It's you know what? It's an improvement. I think the contract and the compensation were pretty solid altogether. I would go Carson Wentz, but we can. I don't know if you have any follow-up questions on that. But that's kind of where I'm at right now.
No. I totally get it, man, and it's totally a respectable statement. And I guess my only rebuttal back to the people that. And I had to kind of take a step back and kind of realize the situation that Carson Wentz was probably in these last couple of years, right? I've always been a big proponent. You can leave it downstairs. I've always been a big proponent of saying not only did Carson come in knowing that he was the guy, they threw everything in the kitchen sink to have him start out there, so he was kind of handed the Eagles job, but we knew what kind of talent he was. The only question mark, and even if you watch him in college, is just the injuries, man. Like, he plays reckless. He needs that coach that's going to tell him, like, stop, like, it's okay. And we understand the success he had around Frank Reich. So when I look at his whole Eagles career, not only, and I think, to me, I think that the Eagles fan base and the organization, and I know a lot of people out there that I know are Eagles fans, but they can be very egotistical in the way that they deal with a lot of things. And I will always be the first one to say that their hopes are always really high, but then when they don't meet expectations, they can be the worst, and they literally run their players out. So, when you're talking about it, like, Carson Wentz got hurt. Then Nick Foles came in and had the success that he had. And then not only are you having to deal with, like, man, I was an MVP at one, or I could have been an MVP type of, in the MVP voting. I mean, he had that great of a season. Then Nick Foles wins the Super Bowl without you. And then people are wondering, should Nick Foles be our quarterback or should it be Carson? And then the fan base is like, we want Carson back. Dealing with the neck injury, forces itself back out there, and what happens? He gets hurt, then comes back and has a decent year, and then what he's living in is just the shadow of that. What was it? The 2017 season of, not only did Nick Foles win us a Super Bowl, but then they built a damn statue of the guy talking about the Philly play. Like, ridiculous. With that being said, we can talk about whatever his Eagles career was, but you're dealing with the psyche of this guy right now. And it's like, what is going to be good for his mindset moving forward? So then what happens? Maybe the solution is trade him to the Colts. With that whole deal that got worked out, and I still think Chris Ballard's one of probably the best GM in football right now with everything that he does. So the deal that got worked out was just not a confidence builder at all, saying, if he's going to play 70% of the snaps, then you got to send us your first round pick. So either way it went, it wasn't a good situation for Carson. But then you lose against the Jaguars. You're with your old coach that got you to the right area. It was almost like, you shouldn't fail Carson. And I said the same thing. I'm like, if he fails, it's his own fault. But now I'm in the mindset of kind of like, sitting here with the rose-colored glasses looking at that situation. But how would you feel if you were a player that had success and you felt comfortable? You might get a little bit too comfortable with knowing that I'm with the guy that that helped me get the success. I'm with the team that can be super successful, and then I mess up and then they ship me out. Another psyche change there. And then you end up at Washington, where it's really truly the freshest start. And this is probably what should have happened, for him to go to a team where he has no connections but the NFC East attached to it. So I agree with you now that I have taken a step back and said, I think Carson Wentz is going to have a better season than what people are expecting him to. And I'm not the biggest Carson fan, but I've always said it's up here. It's never his ability. It's always just in his head of how well he's going to play.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think there's different expectations for every franchise too. So I do like your perspective of coming to Washington. I think it's going to have more of a clean slate and more leniency with our team. If you think about it, with Indianapolis, he was like, there's a legacy of quarterbacks in Indianapolis, right? You had, Peyton Manning, you had Andrew Luck, and then you had Phillip Rivers back to back to back. And that's pretty much that transition for the past 15, 20 years. Having Carson Wentz come in, the team thought that they were going to have like a franchise quarterback, someone to build around. And, he had an up and down kind of year. There's a couple games where he threw for like 150 yards, 200 yards. It wasn't like that breakthrough game, more of a game manager perspective. And then Irsay basically butt heads with him. And Irsay's a volatile owner. Like, we get a lot of heat in Washington for, Dan Snyder, and, justfully so. But I do think Irsay is kind of a hot-headed too. So there was some controversy about Carson Wentz not being vaccinated. He's uberly religious, which, there's no qualms for me. But
whatever, get you through your day, get you through your day.
Exactly. It gets you through your day. But, sometimes people said that he's kind of hard to relate to in the locker room. That may have been an issue. But I think coming here, I think people are really excited for him. I think that's going to be good for him as well. In regard to the compensation, Washington gave up 2 third-round picks. And they essentially, we had that same kicker where if he plays at a certain percentage, 70% or whatever it is, it moves it to a second round pick. But what I like about the deal, there's a whole bunch of different parts for us, right? For one, we traded back for Jahan Dotson. We're going to talk about him later on. We traded back and we got in a 3rd round pick, basically for trading back. So half of the deal got recompensated for us. And then next year we let Brendan Sheriff walk. And next year we're going to get a compensatory 3rd round pick back. So essentially, like those 2 picks that we traded away for, it ends up being a wash. And I actually like his deal. His deal is a 3-year deal. All the money is guaranteed this year, so he can be cut for no cost for the next 2 years if they want to, or they can restructure it and kind of stretch it out if he does a pretty good job. So
yeah.
All the cards are in Washington's hands. So I think it's a good deal. It's a low risk maneuver. The only thing the only big cost is the salary, the $28 million a year, which is expensive, but in regard to quarterback terms, $28 million isn't the worst in the world. So I think it's a fair opportunity. It's a fair shot.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it. It's like a high risk, high reward kind of situation, but you're not really risking a lot if he doesn't perform well. And then you're also giving Taylor Heineke, and not like I said, I'm a fan of Taylor Heineke. I don't think he had a terrible season whatsoever dealing with what he had to deal with, but you're bringing a veteran guy as well that he can learn under, that has kind of been in his own little situation with his bumps and bruises too, just like Taylor has. So, you get a relatable guy in there for him just in case. But yeah, man, everything that you said, I totally agree with. And I just hope he has a good season, has a bounce back year. And like you said about Jim Irsay, this is the point that I wanted to hit on there. That is very true. What you said, he is kind of, what have you done for me lately? And he's gotten kind of lucky with having not only Peyton Manning as his quarterback, but when they picked up Andrew Luck, he had success right away. And this relates back, and what I wanted to get in here is the Jacoby Brissett thing is a perfect example of what you're talking about. Because not only for the fact that Jacoby Brissett came in after the overarching situation that happened with Andrew Luck retiring, you come in and you have a great year up until your injury, and then next year they pretty much ship you out to Miami. And I was looking forward to Jacoby Brissett coming back and having another run-of-the-mill year where, he was going to make an impact. And now, he's a backup again in another situation where he could probably, I think Jacoby Brissett could be that number 32, 33 quarterback in the NFL for somebody. But, that's very thoughtful of you to say that about Carson, because he dealt with the same thing with Jim Irsay. So, but yeah, a lot of good things, I guess, in that quarterback room. And I'm all about, if you've ever heard our show before, I'm all about how strong your position rooms are, and this just made that even stronger. And that next guy up mentality is going to be super strong going into the games where they might need a Taylor to come in for Carson. Because already know, man, the injury thing is just the only question mark that I think you could really give him at this point in time.